So speaker layouts and how do we actually choose the right speaker for the application. So from here now on, I will concentrate on Dolby Atmos and forget about the rest, because Atmos is the elephant in the room. It's the biggest and most important format at the moment. And so that's why I'm concentrating now on Atmos. Yeah, also from my part, very welcome. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here and present a little bit an immersive audio workshop. The session is divided into three different parts. The first part will be like an overview about the technology, about formats, about also how Genelec plays a role in the immersive audio world. We're definitely going to spend time listening to immersive audio content. But then also I will show you one of my mixing projects and how I actually mix in Dolby Atmos. So what are my ideas? How do I approach a mix? How do I set up the workflow? So before we start, let's have a look on the different immersive audio formats that are available, knowing that there are hundreds of different formats. But today we'll focus a little bit more on Dolby Atmos because that's the most commercially known and the most used format. And having said this, I mean, Atmos has been around for 13 years now. I was actually lucky to build the first German Dolby Atmos studio in 2012. So since then, I'm working with that format. And when we talk about immersive audio, we have to talk about channel-based and object-based formats. But we're going to cover this in a second. But Atmos, like an overall topic, is a hybrid format consisting of channel-based and object-based audio, and you'll find it actually everywhere. In cinema, in home cinema, in broadcast, in music, automotive, gaming. So that's the first of the formats. The next one, also very important and interesting, especially for music, is Oro 3D. Oro 3D is a little bit older than Dolby Atmos, just 2 years older, but and it's mainly a channel-based immersive audio system. And we'll cover this in a minute, what they are doing differently to Dolby Atmos. But they have an origin, obviously, also in cinema, in home cinema. Broadcast, very little, not much. Music, very important for Oro 3D, but not streaming as of today. They are doing tests right now in doing streaming. But you'll also find it in automotive and in gaming. There is a channel-based version of Oro 3D, which is called Oro Max. And Oro Max has objects, but I haven't seen any installation where it's been used. So it's, I would say, 95% channel-based, 5% object-based. But technically it is possible, but it's just not really used. Not like Dolby Atmos. Dolby Atmos is always both. The next format, it's also interesting, especially in broadcast, is MPEG-H. MPEG-H is a development from a German research institute, from the Fraunhofer Institute. Those were the guys who also designed the MP3 codec many years ago and tried to destroy the music industry, but it didn't work, luckily. And it is a channel and object-based format, and it's mainly used in broadcast. I know that TV Globo in Brazil is using it. I think maybe in South Korea. I'm not sure if it's used here in public broadcast. But it's a main broadcast immersive audio format, and it is the technical foundation of the Sony 360 reality audio format. So Sony 360 is based on MPEG-H. Sony 360 is also interesting because it is, at the moment, it seems to be the only real competitor to Dolby Atmos when it comes to music. And because there are some streaming services that also support Sony 360, but it's not as much as Dolby. So we'll see where this is going in the future. And but the good thing is, for Genelec, we are agnostic. We can use all formats if we want. When we look on the speaker layouts, so how do we set up the speakers for immersive audio applications? Starting with Dolby Atmos home cinema, I'm not going to talk about theatrical. This is something outside of this room. So Dolby Atmos home entertainment, that's how they call it. accommodates all the music creation, but also the content creation for video on demand, like Netflix, Amazon, Apple, local video providers. And it can have up to 22 speakers maximum. But the most common setups are 7.1.4. That's what we usually see in studios. Or it can go up to 9.1.6 speaker layouts. And one thing is very important. If you want to create Dolby Atmos content, there is no certification needed by default. You can get certified with your room, with calibration, with the sonic advisors, but it's not mandatory to create content. When we look at Oro 3D, it has a slightly different setup of the speakers because Oro 3D talks in layers. So they have a 3-layer approach of how to place the speakers, and it's mainly used as static 5.1 layout on the base layer that we know. Then they can add another layer also up to 5.0, and then what they also have is a mono center in the middle. It's what they call the voice of God. That's the channel is called Voice of God. And so Oro 3D is available in 9.1, so it's 5 plus 4, in 11.1, which is 7 plus 4, which could be like Oro with Atmos, or 13, which is 7 plus 5 plus the Voice of God. And before we go into translation, one thing is very important. Oro 3D is it's an excellent format when you want to create recordings, because you can build microphone setups that have exactly the same amount of microphones for the dedicated Oro 3D speaker channels. Now, when we talk about these numbers, 7.1.4, 9.1.6, 5.1.2, 11.1, numbers. So what do they actually mean? You probably know this, but I have it in the slide to really kind of understand what it means. So in Atmos, we usually talk about a combination like 7.1.4, which means we have 7 speakers on the ear height. We have 1 subwoofer channel, or 2 in this case. It's 1 channel, but it's 2 speakers. And then we have 4 top speakers. In Oro 3D, we talk about 13.1, which is, again, 7 speakers on ear height, 5 speakers on the second layer, the voice of God, and the subwoofer. And to make it really complicated, Sony 360 is talking about 13.0. Again, another number. But what they have is 5 speakers on ear height, 5 speakers on a height layer, and then 3 speakers in front of you on the floor. So below the left, center, and right. They don't have a subwoofer. There is no subwoofer channel in Sony 360 because the approach is a dome approach, and it's mainly for headphones. So the speaker layout for Sony 360, you don't find it at people's home, because the content production for Sony 360 is on speakers for headphones, playback. But Dolby Atmos is speakers, to cars, to sound bars, to something. So it is slightly different, but they don't have a subwoofer channel. So when we have a look, because we have to check what means channel-based audio, object-based audio, you know this. Maybe somebody doesn't know it, so that's why I have it in the presentation. A channel-based workflow. We have in a cinema, okay? We have 5 speakers on the side, or 10. Big rooms, multiplex cinemas. You have many speakers on the side. So when you have a channel-based system, the sound that you put to the side surrounds will be played back on all the speakers at the same time. Now, when you take the same sound as an object, you can place it on every individual speaker out of these 10. So it is much more precise, much more defined, more definition in the surrounds when you use objects compared to the channels. But still, in the creation process, channel-based is still very important. Not for music, but for film. But today we'll focus on music, so maybe we skip that a bit, but does it make sense? Okay. But in cinema, the bed channels are still important for atmospheres, reverbs, constant like beds of sound. The objects are very important for a helicopter flying, or a bird, tweet, 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 or something, very precise things. It's a combination of both. You need both. In music, it's a bit different, but in cinema, the objects help you to gain precision in the surrounds, whereas the bed and the channel-based workflow gives you like an overall kind of bed of sound. And it depends what content you're using. You use either the channel-based or the objects. We'll talk about this when I show you my session. Yeah, then I show you a bit what the difference is, and then we also listen to the difference. Let's have a look on the speaker setups. So speaker layouts, and how do we actually choose the right speaker for the application. So from here now on, I will concentrate on Dolby Atmos and forget about the rest, because Atmos is the elephant in the room. It's the biggest and most important format at the moment. And so that's why I'm concentrating now on Atmos. So the first thing we have to understand is, what is my layout size? And this is a Dolby thing, you know that. And the layout is determined by the width, by the length, and the height of the room. And there are minimum recommendations from Dolby how large the layout should be. It's actually 3 meters by 3 meter 50 by 2 meter 40. That's the minimum. Or it can actually grow bigger. The layout is also important. The layout does not mean the room size. So let's say you have a very large room, but you only take half of the room for your speaker setup. Then only this area is calculated in the layout, and the rest of the room doesn't matter for calculation also of the speakers. We at Genelec, we have a little document that is called the Monitor Setup Guide. It's a very important document, and it will get a new version this year. But in the Monitor Setup Guide, there is a SAM monitor model selector, and depending on the criteria that the format is asking you. So let's speak about Dolby Atmos. Dolby Atmos Theatrical is asking you to have 85 dB at the listening position, plus 20 dB headroom. So the speaker has to create 105 dB SPL at the listening position. With Atmos Home, it's 99 dB SPL performance of the speaker at the listening position. And in order to find the right one, you can see the calculation. You see the distance far away from the speaker, and then you see the SPL performance. So you get an idea of, okay, I sit away 2 meters, like this, or 2 meter 50, and I can choose model, I don't know, 8351. It will work. So that's a bit a helping tool to find the first correct models that meet the specification. The more precise way of defining the correct models is using the Dolby DART, the Dolby Atmos Room Design Tool, DART. And so what you do is, on the top, is my mouse visible here, you put in your workspace, your layout size, length by width by height. You put in your mixing position, and then you have a drop-down menu here showing you which speaker will work or will not work, and it shows you also kind of green light, orange or red, depending on, yes, it works, it's okay, it doesn't work. That's the most kind of concrete way to define the correct speakers. You can forget of all the other brands, just go to G for Genelec, and then you'll find what you need. For the speaker positioning, I will just make it very quick. We're using the ITU circle as a base reference. So that's also what Dolby is referring to, is the ITU kind of standards, which means the left and right position go to 30 degrees. The side surrounds are between 90 and 110 degrees. The rear surrounds 135 to 150 degrees, and so on. For the top, the same, you go straight up, 45 degrees, 45 degrees, and then you have basically all the 4 top positions. Knowing that the majority of the song is still left and right, that's where the energies come. But then you have all the little vocal chops, instruments flying around, and this is, yeah, it's a nice example, I think. When we talk about immersive audio, it is very important to also talk about calibration of the speakers in the room. Now, in an ideal world, every speaker would be flat in frequency response. So this is my studio. Oh. No. No. Now, in an anechoic chamber, without reverb, the speakers are flat. That's the design kind of concept. But the moment I take a speaker and put it into a room, no matter how good the room is, it starts to interact with the room. We get reflections, we get modes, we get boundary loading effects. So that's why we have to take care of the effects of the calibration. So that's why a speaker that is completely flat in the anechoic chamber will look like this in a studio. That is absolutely normal. So we have too much energy in the bass, we might have some dips in the middle range. So and that's why we have to now treat this. And in Genelec, what we do, we use GLM, the Genelec Loudspeaker Manager, which is a software, you know this, that connects to the speakers and to the DSP of the speakers to calibrate the room. And the same frequency response that I showed you is the same here. So the red curve is the speaker non-calibrated, uncalibrated in the room. The blue curves is the filters that GLM applies, and the green curve is the result. That's the ideal result. So in Genelec it looks like this, but basically that is the Genelec setup. Consists of the software on PC or Mac, the GLM 5 version, connected to, in this case, also the reference controller, which is our GLM hub, connected with standard Ethernet cables in a daisy chain mode through all the speakers, up to 80. And then we also have the measurement microphone that takes care of the calibration. So what are we calibrating? First of all, we're calibrating the frequency response to make it use in the room. But that's not enough. For immersive audio, we also have to calibrate the levels, because every speaker needs to reach the listening position with the same volume, no matter how far they are. This one is very far. This one is very near. So this one is too loud. So it levels down in GLM. And the third thing is time adjustments, because this one is too close, so it comes early. This one is far, so it comes late. So that's why this one has to be delayed to make it virtually the same position all around. And the last thing is we also calibrate the phase on the crossover frequency for bass management with the subwoofers. And all this is happening in the speaker. There's no extra device, no box, no nothing. So we talk directly with the speakers. And the speakers, you probably know this, but it's just for being complete in my presentation, is all these models support this technology, because we call them SAM speakers, Smart Active Monitors. And it starts with 8320, that size, going all the way to this size, and even the big flush mount. All these speakers support this technology, but not only the speakers, obviously, also the subwoofers. And that makes the whole monitoring system complete. Okay, so that was basically the Genelec technology part of things. Let's have a look at the studio setup and the production tools that you can deploy for Atmos music. Basically, what do we see? We see a digital audio workstation. It can be Pro Tools, Logic, Nuendo, Cubase, whatever. We need a multi-channel audio interface. From there, we're connecting all the speakers. And when we're using Genelec, obviously, then we have a second path with the GLM network. So either the GLM kit or the reference controller. And from there, we connect up to 80 speakers. Here, in this room, so the multi-channel audio interface is actually the Genelec 9401 interface. And I connect it just with Ethernet, Ravenna, AES67 cable, going into the box, and from there it's AES EBU, so digital audio, to all the speakers. It's super simple. But this is a setup for only playback. When you need recording, gets a bit more complicated. Obviously, you need inputs and etc., etc. So the different production tools for first Dolby Atmos are, and the main one is the Dolby Atmos renderer, which is a software that is available from Dolby. You can buy it on the Avid marketplace. And there are various applications that can talk to this renderer. So Pro Tools, Nuendo, etc. Or like applications that don't support Pro Tools, like Ableton or Bitwig, they can use the Dolby Atmos Penner plugin. And all these tools connect to this renderer. How this works, we'll see in a second. In Logic, it's much simpler because the renderer is built into Logic, actually in Pro Tools now as well, just to be complete. But in Logic, it's very simple. The renderer is built in the software, and you can start working with headphones in binaural or up to 7.1.4 speakers. That's the limitation of Logic in this case. In Nuendo, you also have the integrated Dolby Atmos renderer, actually in Cubase as well. It's the same engine. They have done a very nice own object penner, which is also graphically interesting because you see a lot of parameters. And this is also built right into Nuendo, so no need for an external renderer software. The only time when I will talk about Oro 3D is now, because Oro 3D has also a tool of production technology, of plugins that you need to create Oro 3D. It's a little bit more complicated because Oro 3D needs what we call a post-fader insert, which doesn't exist in Pro Tools, in Nuendo, in Cubase. It just simply doesn't. So Oro is complicated because you have to put the Penner plugin on every channel, but then your fader of this channel is dead because you have to use the fader in the plugin for volume. So I don't know if you understand, but I hope you understand what it is. It's a bit more complicated, but it works. So AAX VST audio unit. Yeah. You can get it on the Oro 3D website. Yeah. It's what I think they call it Oro production tools or something. Yeah. But then you get this suite of plugins. For MPEG-H, not Atmos, but MPEG-H, it's same, but different. Yeah. So they all do the same, but slightly different. So MPEG-H, they have an own authoring program. It works the same. You have a plugin where you do the panning, and this goes to the renderer. And the MPEG-H production tools are now implemented in Pro Tools. So when you install Pro Tools, you can download the MPEG-H bundle. It comes from Avid, free of charge. And the second option is there's a company from Germany, actually from Hamburg. It's called New Audio Technology, and they do the Spatial Audio Designer plugin. And this plugin can work in MPEG-H and can do the mastering also for MPEG-H and Sony 360. This is the renderer. This is not the plugin. So the plugin, of course, has to hide. It has to. When we look at Sony 360 production tools on the left-hand side, and this is what I meant with the dome, you know. So, and that's also the reason why you have 3 speakers on the bottom, because you need the angle below you, which is the only format that allows to have sound underneath. The rest is always here or above. But Sony 360 can also have play sound below you, and that's why it is this dome setup, and that's the software, the production tools from Sony. And the Spatial Audio Designer, again, because it can do mastering for MPEG-H, automatically also does it for Sony 360, because Sony 360 is built on MPEG-H from the technology. So that's why. So, and the last couple of parts of my presentation actually are getting more into practicality in the studio when we have a look at how to listen to immersive music like Apple Music or a Blu-ray or some already kind of released content. How can we listen to that in the studio to check what is the competition doing, what is Kendrick Lamar doing, and so on. So how does it sound? How can we monitor this? So first of all, we have to understand where do we hear immersive music available today. And probably the biggest streaming service globally is Apple Music at the moment, supporting a lot the Dolby Atmos technology. And you can listen to it on every iPhone and on every Mac computer. The second is then Amazon Music, Amazon HD, and it is available over headphones, binaural, or with their own smart speaker, the Echo Studio speaker. And Tidal is also a streaming service. It's a bit smaller. It's a very niche format, but it is it's high quality streaming service. And they support Dolby Atmos. And unfortunately, they stopped Sony 360 support just a couple of months ago. And the last option, which is the best quality, because it's lossless encoded, is using a Blu-ray disc, a pure audio Blu-ray. Do you know pure audio Blu-ray? Have you heard about this?
Yeah, I haven't heard about this.
You heard?
No.
No, okay. So a Blu-ray, a regular Blu-ray, has a lot of capacity. So we can put a lot of content on it. It's so great, we just remove the video and put only audio. Wow, tons of space. So pure audio Blu-rays are audio-only Blu-rays with multi-formats. So you have Dolby Atmos, Oro 3D, 5.1, and stereo. There you go. And what is very interesting is you can operate it without the TV. On the remote, you have the colors, red, green, yellow, blue. So yellow is Dolby Atmos, green is Dolby Atmos. Yellow is, I think, Oro 3D. Blue is stereo, and red 5.1 or something. So you just basically just turn on what you want and play like a CD. So, but with lossless compression. It's much better sonically than Apple Music. Apple Music is highly compressed. So when we want to make use of this in the studio, how can we listen to, let's say, a streaming service? There are two ways how we can do this, or like a Blu-ray. So, and the simplest way is using a Blu-ray player, connect this to an AVR, a receiver, and the receiver has then analog or digital outputs that go to my Genelec speakers. And I have in my studio, I have this one. So basically I have here HDMI input. This is where my Blu-ray is connected. And then I have all the line level analog outputs that go over a patch bay and a router to my speakers. And the second option is when you use a software like Apple Music on the computer or Apple TV Plus app, then you have to have a 16 by 16 audio interface. It has to be 16 outputs. If it's larger, it doesn't work. It has to be 16 channels. And then you can basically play out of Apple Mac OS onto the interface. If your audio interface is bigger, 32 outputs, 64, then you can use a software, for example, like Loopback or Omnibus from Audio Movers, that create a virtual 16-channel audio interface out of that big interface. If you have 16, then you don't need the software. If you're over, then you have to use something that tells Apple, hey, I'm only 16-channel. Yeah? Because Apple thinks your interface is bigger, so Atmos support is not there. So it has to be 16-channel. And in order to tell Apple, I am only 16 channels, you need a software like this that is just doing a virtual sound card with 16 channels. So that's basically the two options that you have in the studio, like analog cables or software-based to approve an external mix. Now, how do we listen at home? So my mother and my sister, who are not audio engineers, how do they listen to Dolby Atmos music? And I think this is important. And so the different streaming services that are streaming in Dolby Atmos, this is just a part of it. But there are some, I think QQ Music is Chinese, if I remember correctly. So there are many like local streaming services in the world that support Dolby Atmos. And there are a couple of ways how you can listen to Atmos content. First of all, TV. That TV here supports Dolby Atmos. So if an Atmos input is going, you will hear it on the TV speakers decoded. There are smart speakers, Echo Studio, Sony, Apple HomePod, whatever, many different streaming players, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, NVIDIA Shield, many different devices that support Dolby Atmos. Computers, so here all the little speakers in my laptop, they play Atmos. Sound bars, very important, and AVR receivers and smartphones, obviously. I just show you one example because I think that is important also for the studio, is when you listen to a Dolby Atmos mix on a sound bar. Because sound bars are very popular. Many people have a sound bar, and in order for us to be able to check our mix on a sound bar would be the following. Either the song is released on Apple or on Tidal, and then you use the streaming player connected to soundbar. But more importantly, they all have USB input. So you can put your mix on a USB device and connect it to the soundbar and play it directly before it is released for approval. And I mean, the same works for working on smart speakers, but that only works with released content, not preview, where you just connect it, or the same also applies to listening to devices on headphones with a Dolby Atmos enabled end device. But much more important, I think, is cars. And this is becoming very popular. Many different manufacturers. So Mercedes was the first to support Dolby Atmos and Apple Music in the car. Then there's Volvo, there's hundreds of Chinese models that I can't pronounce, and American cars, many different ones. And there's one car that supports Oro 3D. It's a Porsche Panamera. It's the only one. And the rest is Atmos. But one German car supports Oro 3D. Yeah. So, but this is becoming very important because that's the future. I mean, automotive and autonomous driving. People sit in a cinema